Marcus Freeman's trying to do something for Notre Dame that we haven't seen in college football in over a decade.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. And this episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Would Steve Sarkisian make this his final year at Texas? I have my doubts. And LSU is the number one team in the transfer portal right now. What does that mean for next year? We'll talk about that today. But I want to start with Marcus Freeman. So I talked about this last week, that Notre Dame just finds a way to win. It doesn't always look pretty. They're not flashy on offense. Jeremiah Love is a starter at the NFL level. I don't know that anybody else really is on the offensive side of the ball. Even Riley Leonard doesn't have a super high NFL draft grade. Notre Dame is trying to accomplish something we have not seen in over 10 years. 16 to be exact. 15, 16, somewhere in that sort of range. I get caught up on when the season's played, when the national championship is played. Anyway, Notre Dame is averaging fewer than 200 passing yards per game this year, about 189. And yet they have lost just one time, inexplicably, at home to Northern Illinois. Not that they would ever play Northern Illinois, who's going to the Mountain West, by the way, for football. They wouldn't play them on the road, but nevertheless, it continues to be inexplicable that they lost that football game. The last team to win a national championship that had fewer than 200 passing yards per game was Nick Saban at Alabama circa 2009. That is the last time you saw a passing offense that was as unproductive as this one go on to win the whole thing. Now, Michigan's offense last year was not exactly Joe Burrow and company throwing for 400 yards a game. But that offense still had a first-round quarterback at the helm. Riley Leonard's not getting taken in the first round. He'll get drafted somewhere. Someone will take a flyer on him. He's got some good traits. He moves really well. But he feels like a second or third string guy in the Ravens more than he does a backup that gets a chance, when the starter goes down and all of a sudden he pops into this big NFL starter. But J.J. McCarthy is someone who you looked at what he did. The NFL looked at what he did at Michigan last year and said, there's more to it. That's just their style. Notre Dame feels a little bit more like this is kind of what they are. Now, I think Riley Leonard has a little bit more to him, and certainly they lean into the running game on offense. But that'd be a pretty remarkable feat for Marcus Freeman. If he goes out and wins the next two games, he beats Notre Dame, good one, Spencer, beats Penn State on Thursday, and then wins the national championship against either Ohio State or Texas. The same coach that lost to Northern Illinois would have won a national championship, and he would have done something we haven't seen in 15 years in college football. This is a guy, by the way, who's one of the younger head coaches at the Power 4 level in college football, and who is in his fourth season at the helm. I mean, he is not some season better. Nick Saban, when he pulled that off in 2009, had already won a national championship at LSU, was significantly older than Marcus Freeman is now, and he'd been to the NFL. He had been tried and true, and he had been around the block as a head coach. Marcus Freeman is still in the infant stages of his coaching career. So if he goes on to win these next two games, it'd be one of the most impressive coaching jobs we've ever seen. You can't find a long list of teams that have a passing offense that is as unproductive as Notre Dame's that goes on to win it all. Because you think about college football in the year 2025, which we are now in, and you think about the quarterbacks, the receivers. I mean, college football is sending first-round receivers all over the place that are coming out of the draft who get taken in the second or third round that are going on to start. Like, this has become an annual component, and Notre Dame's a little bit more old school. There's something oddly refreshing to me about that the ways that things used to be can indeed still work. It might be harder to win a game with defense and special teams. But when I watch Notre Dame, I get the sense that offense is their third most important side of the ball. They always are solid on special teams. They are obviously great on defense, and they're good enough. They're good enough on offense. So that's the first angle that I wanted to take with this. The second angle for Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame is everyone's been waiting in South Bend to get back to the level they feel like they should be at. Has Marcus Freeman already accomplished that? I hope in the eyes of Notre Dame fans, you look at what he's doing and compare that to a guy we'll talk about later on today's show, Brian Kelly at LSU, who left Notre Dame for Baton Rouge. I hope by now you're able to look at this guy and say, yeah, he's the right coach. This is the guy. And it again is a lesson in patience. Because early on in his tenure, the first game Marcus Freeman coached, he stepped in when Brian Kelly left. He coached the Fiesta Bowl. They lost. Then they lost to begin the season. Then they lost to Marshall. He started 0-3. He lost his first 3 games as a head coach. I get the sense there are a lot of fans out there in a variety of fan bases that would be reactionary in that they'd want him, not allow him to progress in his career. But how much better of a coach is Marcus Freeman now than he was 2 years ago? I know he still lost to Northern Illinois. How much better is Notre Dame now than they were at the start of the season? That's a mark of good coaching. You look at the greatest coaches in the NFL over the years, or heck, in college football as well, they get better as the season goes on. They don't stagnate. They don't peak early. Notre Dame feels like they're peaking right now. They've found their identity. They know what they are about, how they want to win football games, and they don't pretend to be something that they are not. They don't go out and say, Riley Leonard, can you throw it 35 to 40 times? We need you to do this. Nope. We're going to play field position. We're going to run the football. We're going to run our quarterback. They know exactly what they are. So Freeman's progression over the last couple of years, I think, has been really, really impressive. And if he goes on to win his next 2 games, he might not. He's a slight favorite, just ever so slightly, against James Franklin on Thursday. Think about that. Just think about that reality. One of Marcus Freeman or James Franklin, who have taken more than their fair share of flack over the last several years in college football, one of them is going to play for a national championship. Maybe it all won't matter, because if Ohio State plays the way they're capable of, nobody can beat them in the field. That includes Texas, by the way. Does Ohio State always play the way that they are capable? They went and blasted Oregon, had a 34-0 lead. They lost to that same team on the field earlier this season. Now, back to the coaching point. Great teams, great coaches play better as the season goes along, and Ohio State feels like they are peaking right now. Even throughout the season, they struggle with Nebraska. Indiana was a comfortable win, but maybe not as big as the final score indicated per se. Ohio State has played its best football on the biggest stage. So this is not going to be an easy feat, to be sure. But for Marcus Freeman, I am just fascinated to see how the game plays out against Penn State, because I think you have 2 very different identities where Penn State kind of is about the offense. They have great defensive players, but Drew Aller and company, that's been the story for them. And for Marcus Freeman, it's about individual growth as a head coach and the way that Notre Dame has found its identity. 2009 Alabama, last team to average under 200 yards passing and win a national title. That would shift the perception of Marcus Freeman in a lot of people's eyes, and it absolutely should. I think he already should have earned the respect of everybody in college football if he hasn't to this point. But if he were to win these next 2 games, boy, that'd be a heck of a coaching job. One heck of a coaching job. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below or hit me up on Twitter. Would Steve Sarkisian leave for the NFL? Whether he would or not is not relevant to Game Time per se. Though, if you want to watch Steve Sarkisian's team in person, Game Time is the place to do it. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff is an incredible experience that brings fans together like it never has before. And if you want to go to one of these games, guess what? Game Time is the place to go. Game Time's got what's known as Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. As someone who has used Game Time before, I can vouch and say this is the place to go. You want tickets to sports, you want tickets to theater events, comedy, concerts, whatever. Game Time's got it. They are there to help you out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So reports came out from Adam Schefter and others that there could be NFL interest in Texas head coach Steve Sarkisian. All right, let's break this down from Sarkisian's angle first. Would he go to the NFL? It's not the least likely thing in the world. He has been there twice. He was with the Raiders as a quarterback coach in 2004. He had a 2-year stint as the Atlanta Falcons offensive coordinator in 2017-18 before he returned to Alabama. Then, of course, took the Texas job. 2 reasons why I would not go. I'm not speaking for Sark or speaking based on what Sark has said. Just if I were Steve Sarkisian, 2 reasons I would not go to the NFL right now. Number 1, which NFL job that is open or is going to come open sounds super appealing? Do you want to go coach the Jags? Sure, you have Trevor Lawrence, who is kind of a fading prospect at this point in time compared to the rest of the young quarterbacks that he's been drafted close to. And, I mean, he's good, and maybe Sark would be the guy to fix all of that. But, I don't know. Do you want to go to the Jags, who don't have a long tradition of winning, or they're not even the most popular team in Florida? Not even really close to it. Is that where you'd want to go? A place where you'd have to get them to buy in, whereas at Texas, they've been all in from the moment you set foot on campus to help you succeed. So that's the first angle as to why I wouldn't go if I were Sark. The second angle is he has built Texas up, remember. I know they've always had the financial resources there, but Sark has been the one to actually make it work, which just goes to show you, just because you have money in college football and you commit to the program, which I think everybody should do, does not guarantee you success. So when people look at a Texas or an Ohio State or an Oregon or Alabama or whoever and say, well, they just put a bunch of money into it, it's just all about the money. It's not. Look at, I don't know, Texas A&M, which just had an 8-win season. That was an improvement over the prior year. They've been all in for a long time, but they haven't had the right head coach. Now I think they do have the right head coach in Mike Elko. But Sark got there and went 5-7 in his first year. Before last season, he never had a 10-win season as a head coach. He spent several years at Washington, 5 of them, in fact. He spent a couple at USC. It ended as a mess. We all remember that. So he's had a great personal story of overcoming the troubles that he has had in his personal life that bled into his professional life. But he has also grown as a head coach. Going back to my conversations this week, of which I've had a couple with all of you out there, regarding patience for head coaches. Look how long it's taken Steve Sarkisian to get a program consistently to a national championship level. They were in the semifinal last year after winning the Big 12 and beating Alabama on the road in the regular season. And they get to the SEC championship game this year, and thanks to the 12-team playoff, they make it. Maybe they would have made it in a 14 playoff anyway. But this did not happen overnight. It happened over the course of several seasons. It has been a progression, a slower build than you might think at a place like Texas. But all of the work, all the time, all the effort, all the winning and struggles and everything, the ups and downs that have gone into it, there has to be some sort of payoff at the end of it, right? Do you think when Steve Sarkisian took the head coaching job at Texas, his thought was, I want to use this as a springboard. I want to use this as a catapulting job. Never felt that way to me. Hasn't seemed that way. The way he talks about Texas and being the head coach of the program, I don't get that sense. I don't get the sense that he isn't committed to recruiting. Look at the way Texas recruits in the last several cycles. I don't get the sense that he doesn't enjoy it. Now, that could be an appealing part of it. That's usually the primary appeal of coaching the NFL compared to coaching in college football. And there's a lot of change going on in college football. The portal and NIL, it's a very player-empowered time in the sport compared to what Sark has been used to. Does he feel like a guy who's not adapting? Does it feel like a guy who is frustrated by the changing world and doesn't want to adapt and evolve or any of these things? I've never gotten that impression from him. I see a guy who says, hey, we got the resources over here to compete in NIL at a high level. And they do. Hey, we've got the ability to go out and add a bunch of key transfers. I mean, where would they be without Matthew Golden, who was a transfer from Houston, or Isaiah Bond or Silas Bolden? I've watched those guys make plays for Texas all year, all transfers in the offseason. So it feels like he has an adaptive approach, which is what you need to have in order to succeed, or else you get forced out in college football. And Steve Sarkisian's not as young as a Marcus Freeman or a Dan Lanning per se, but he's not someone who in his elder years, like Mac Brown or Nick Saban, maybe wasn't quite as open to it. We've seen a lot of college basketball coaches who have been great all-time coaches. They looked at this modern world and said, nah, I'm out. I'm done. I don't want to deal with this. So the payoff point, though, do you think Sark went to Texas and didn't want to at least make a national championship game? Because I know there are coaches in the college football world who don't want to be at one particular job forever. I also know that most of them would like to have some level of success and feel like they not only proved themselves as a coach, but also gave that place their all because of the opportunity afforded to them before they would move on to another location. And for Steve Sarkisian, just making the semifinal for a second straight year, I don't know that that's enough. It also wouldn't make a lot of sense to me because I don't see a looming drop-off for Texas. I see something that looks sustainable. I don't think Texas is going to beat Ohio State this week, especially if Ohio State plays the way they have in their first two playoff games against Tennessee and Oregon. But I don't see Texas as having a peak year. They're not a window program. They have the ability to sustain this success, and he's making all of the commitments, and he is getting that commitment back from the fans, from the boosters, from everybody at Texas. So the appeal to going to the NFL, I understand it. And if I were an NFL team, if I felt like that was the right option as a head coach, sure, maybe I'd go and call him. I mean, he's certainly known more, at least from afar, as a tactician than he is a culture and recruiting guy. But that doesn't mean he doesn't know how to build a winning culture or how to build one that continues to acquire talent at a high level year in and year out, because he's shown that that's what Texas is capable of doing. So I wouldn't go. I wouldn't, personally. Now, I'm biased. I love college football. Here I am hosting a college football show. So I look at the idea of going to the NFL, and yes, there is an upside to it. That upside is you don't have to deal with recruiting in the portal. I mean, the portal's nuts. When you sign a player to a contract in the NFL, they can't just opt out of it after a year. Well, you can do that in college football literally all the time for unlimited reasons right now. You can say, I'm hitting the transfer portal. Yeah, I know I signed last week. I'm going to go over here. You had a 5-star quarterback that signed with Oregon now for various circumstances that are not necessarily having to do with Oregon as much as they are to do with Cal. But you had a quarterback, and you see players all the time now. They will sign, Julian Sayin, by the way, sign with Alabama, and before he even took a snap in spring ball or maybe even enrolled in a class, he transferred up to Ohio State. That's a frustrating thing to deal with for coaches. So perhaps that's weighing on Sark's mind more than he has let on publicly, and he would like to be able to just coach ball. But when I look at what he's built and what Texas can continue to be, I don't know why he'd leave. At least not until he's made a national championship game. That's just where I would that's just where I would come at it from. You have Quinn Ewers now. It'll be Arch Manning next year. I think this is going to be something that continues to work. They might not get to a national semifinal every year. No one's going to get to a national semifinal every year. But Texas has got to be one of the hottest programs in all of college football. Who's been to back-to-back semifinals? Nobody. The teams last year, Michigan, Washington, dropped off. Bama dropped off. Texas stayed up there. In fact, maybe even elevated from what they were a season ago, which is pretty challenging considering the amount of talent that they lost to the NFL draft. So I think, I know that people like Adam Schefter, they're not making up that there could be interest from the NFL. I just don't know how real that interest would be. I give this more credibility than, say, the report that came out that Dan Lanning will get interest in NFL circles. He's never coached in the NFL. Sark went there once, went there again. Typically, you don't do that unless you have an interest in coaching there in the long run. Like if Lane Kiffin were to be rumored to be interviewing for an NFL job, well, yeah, of course I could see that. He's been an NFL head coach before, but he's also found a pretty good groove in college football and is winning a lot of games for Ole Miss with back-to-back 10-win seasons. So I think Sark stays at Texas, but that's just my opinion. That's just my feeling on it. I'd stay there because he's got a good thing going, and I don't see a massive drop-off looming. But if you ever get the sense that could arrive, if they start losing some recruiting battles and they don't have as clear of a plan at quarterback and there isn't a transfer available in the coming years post-Arch Manning, then maybe he'd consider. But right now, I think he's in a pretty good situation. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below or hit me up on Twitter at smclaughlincfb. Do you know who the number one team in the transfer portal is right now? Bet you don't. But before we get to LSU, we're getting to FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. And they start this week, just like the college football playoff continues this week. It's all available over there on FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets whether you win or lose. You don't even have to be right. If you think Ohio State's winning and they're rolling, Ohio State minus 5.5. If you think Notre Dame is going to continue this run after losing to Northern Illinois, hey, minus 1.5. It's all available there over at FanDuel. If you think the other teams are winning, take the points. Take the points. So everything that you want to bet on is over available at FanDuel, and you want to go to FanDuel.com. That's the place to go to get $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com, that's the place to go. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Who has the best transfer portal class in all of college football? I bet you didn't know that it's LSU because you're focusing on the playoff and all the attention. And I was just talking about that for 2 segments, but I wanted to pop one in here talking about LSU. That's Matt Moscona of Locked On LSU, your go-to source for anything on the Tigers. Matt, it feels like LSU kind of snuck up and just overtook Texas Tech, just as we all would have predicted during the season as the teams battling for the top portal class. LSU that had a disappointing 9-4 campaign and Texas Tech that had an 8-4 regular season. I mean, just how we all drew it up, right?
I'm not sure I expected Texas Tech. LSU, there is necessity and urgency, Spencer. Year 3 of Brian Kelly, you mentioned the 4 losses. Going into year 4, there is an urgency for this program to make the 12-team college football playoff. And I think every booster understood it. Brian Kelly, his staff understood it. And coming off the disappointment of watching Bryce Underwood flip just before signing day, really sent a lot of shockwaves through some important money people in and around this program. And as a result, you're seeing this portal class, but it feels very much like, man, the baseline in 2025 is you will make the college football playoff. And if not, that is a wholly unacceptable result after this.
Now, the Underwood move certainly came as a surprise. They add Martin Van Buren from Mississippi State, maybe as a guy to develop behind Garrett Nussmeier for a year. A move I actually like, but by the way, because I am here for kids understanding, particularly at quarterback, I'm not ready right now. Let me go find a place where I can become ready and then be the best version of myself. But do you think the Nussmeier return led to that Bryce Underwood flip to Michigan, or do you think it was just Dave Portnoy is really appealing?
Well, first of all, Martin Van Buren was a president with a long beard. Michael Van Buren is the quarterback. But very good that you know who Martin Van Buren is.
I know my presidents incredibly well. Incredibly well.
No, the Underwood,
I can't believe I did that.
I can. It's a completely logical thing to do. I mean, it's how many Van Burens are there whose names start with that? That's completely.
These are the only 2 that I know of, and they both have first names that start with M. Nevertheless,
bingo. No, the Underwood flip was 100% the Larry Ellison, Dave Portnoy thing. I mean, Spencer, this isn't a sour grapes LSU thing, because God bless the kid. He was offered $12 million. He should have taken the $12 million. Like, who wouldn't do that? But this was a kid who had only previously visited Michigan in the summer of 2023. He never visited the campus 30 minutes from his house since Sharon Moore had been the coach. He was at LSU's campus with his family for the Alabama game 2 weeks prior, when he said he was locked in. Listen, he had a great relationship with LSU. He wanted to be at LSU. They put a lot of resources into recruiting him, but the Godfather offer came, and I don't fault the kid at all for taking it. But LSU after that had to make sure that priority number one was getting Garrett Nussmeier to return. And they did, and they paid a very heavy penny to make sure that Nussmeier returned. And then they had to make sure that they supplemented their depth at quarterback, and that's why they went and signed Michael Van Buren out of the transfer portal. And, my understanding is Van Buren got north of $400K. So $400K to be a backup for a year and then have a chance to win the starting job in 2026 isn't a bad gig.
No, and you get a chance to learn behind a veteran quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier, who will have some talent around him. I want to get back to the portal class element. Why is LSU in the position they are rankings-wise? Who are the headliners? Because Van Buren might be the biggest name because he's a quarterback, but it's kind of everybody else that has seen them shoot up the rankings, right?
Sure. Yeah, I don't even know that I would say Van Buren is the head of the class. Patrick Payton is a guy that a lot of people remember from Florida State. He'll be playing his 5th year of college ball. I mean, he's a guy that's got more than 30 TFLs and 16 sacks during his time with the Seminoles, 6'5", 250. I mean, he is a legit plug-and-play starter at defensive end. I mean, Spencer, LSU lost both of their starting defensive ends. They went and got 3. Jamari Butler's another from Nebraska, Jack Pyburn from Florida. 3 guys they expect to be immediate contributors. They're losing 4 starting offensive linemen. They've already added 2 starting offensive linemen via the portal. Braylon Moore, the highest rated center in the portal from Virginia Tech. Josh Thompson, another highly rated guy from Northwestern that started at both guard and tackle. The thing is, I'm throwing a lot of names. People may not know all these names. Just understand that what LSU did was they went and got guys that were 3- and 4-year starters at major college football programs that were among the best in the portal at their position. So they added 14 guys. I would, as of now, by the way, Spencer, they're not done. I would say that as of today, minimum 7 of the 14 they've added will be starting against Clemson when they play on August the 30th next year. I mean, they went and got front lines, immediate impact starting guys, not that dissimilar from what Ole Miss did a year ago.
Yeah, and Ole Miss, obviously there's been a whole debate over the last couple of months, but hey, they blew out Duke in the bowl game, so they proved it against the backup quarterback in there. But how does this all come together for LSU? Do you feel like the additions they've made make them significantly better than what they were on the field this year? Because when I watched LSU in that opener against USC, I thought they would lose that game. They did. Then they rattled off a bunch of wins. And then it was 3 straight losses, Matt, where with new defense coordinator Blake Baker in charge running that side of the ball, they allowed 35 points per game in that stretch. Have they improved enough to where that shouldn't happen again next season?
Well, they've improved enough. We'll see if it reflects in the wins and losses. See, Spencer, there's 2 ways you can look at LSU this year. So you mentioned USC. That game was tied with 8 seconds to go.
Yeah.
Right? You could have very easily won that game. They didn't. Texas A&M, you led by 10 midway through the 3rd quarter. Then the 3 turnovers, the avalanche happened, and you lost that game. Even Florida, you controlled the ball for 42 minutes in that game and had a touchdown taken off the board because of an OPI. There's 3 games right there that were very winnable for you. The only that wasn't was the Alabama game where you got housed. The flip side of it is, boy, you were really fortunate to beat South Carolina on the road. You were really fortunate to beat Ole Miss at home. I mean, those 2 don't go your way, you're 6-6. So you split the difference, you're 8-4. It's where they landed. The thought is these additions should help you win at least 2 of those games you lost. And if you did, you're 10-2 and you'll be in the playoff. And then you look at how the draw goes. But you asked the question, do the portal additions make them good enough to prevent what happened? Yes. A 4-loss season would be, by anybody's expectation, completely unacceptable next year. This has got to be a college football playoff team in 2025.
You mentioned that they are not done in the transfer portal. Where else do you expect Louisiana State to look?
Safety and offensive tackle. So safety was by far the worst position on the team. Major Burns is out of eligibility. Sage Ryan transferred to Ole Miss. Good luck. Neither one of those guys played particularly well. They have got to add a safety, and they will. They're hosting 2 this week. I'm told there's even, third-party conversations with a starting caliber safety who's on a college football playoff team right now. So don't be surprised at all this isn't an if, Spencer. This is not even they have got to add help at safety. It's not you'd like to. They will not kick off against Clemson without adding a safety somewhere. And then another offensive tackle would really solidify things. So those 2 positions, keep an eye out.
I like saying Louisiana State every now and then just to throw people off because no one calls it that. And when you hear Louisiana State, you probably think of Louisiana Tech in Conference USA. They might be in America. I don't know. Everything's all jumbled and whatnot down there. So
they're in Tex and CUSA, and the one person who did say Louisiana State was old Papa Vern. Vern Lundquist would say, "Touchdown, Louisiana State." But the only one that would.
Some of the silkiest.
LSU, by the way, LSU basketball has some sick old school uniforms with script Louisiana State on it. Stars dotting the I's. Check out the logo if you've never seen it. Sick throwback.
How can we get those onto the football field? Because I haven't even seen those, and I know that I need to see them on a broadcast on Saturday next year.
It'll never happen in a football. You never say never with what they do in football uniform, with all uniforms now. But go check out the throwback. They wear them. They wear the throwbacks for basketball. They're really sick.
That is excellent. That's really excellent. And to bring up Vern Lundquist as well, he is always a welcome reference on this show.
Vern Lundquist, fun fact, born the same year as Martin Van Buren, and the uniforms were worn the same year that Martin Van Buren was president.
Oh, and I'm just sad that he will not be at the 16th green at Augusta anymore come April. Matt Moscona, Locked On LSU. Matt, thanks for the time, my man.
You got it.
Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.